My name is Lot, and this is my story. I will tell you the truth about Sodom and Gomorrah, as I was there. The story began when my uncle Abraham and I embarked on a journey led by God's command. Leaving our family's home, we went into the unknown, guided by Abraham's faith and a promise from God. It was nothing like we had ever seen. Our travels brought us to new lands. We journeyed with Sarah, Abram's wife, and my wife all the way to Egypt. I remember when my uncle Abram and I journeyed from Egypt, ascending to the Negev with all our belongings and wealth. We were accompanied by his wife Sarai, and we carried the abundant wealth we had amassed. Livestock in great numbers, silver and gold. Our journey took us through various lands, and we eventually arrived at Bethel, the sacred place between Bethel and Ai. This is where Uncle Abram had previously pitched his tent, and where he first built an altar to worship the Lord. In that hallowed place, he invoked the name of the Lord once again, reaffirming his faith and commitment. During our travels, I too had accumulated many flocks, herds, and tents. I am a man of wealth too. Our wealth had grown so immense that the land we occupied together could no longer sustain us. Despite the vastness of the terrain, our combined assets needed to be more substantial, leading to an inevitable strain on the available resources. Consequently, tensions began to surface, not just within our own camps, but also between our herdsmen. It was a challenging time, as we were amidst the Canaanites and Perizzites, who were the indigenous dwellers of the land. Recognizing the gravity of the situation and the escalating disputes among our herdsmen, my uncle Abram approached me with a proposition aimed at resolving the tension. He emphasized the importance of maintaining harmony between us, highlighting that we were, after all, close kinsmen. With a vast expanse of land stretching out before us, he suggested that we part ways amicably to prevent any further discord. He presented me with a choice. If I decided to venture left, he would go right. If my preference was to head right, then he would travel to the left. The fairness of his proposal resonated with me, acknowledging that it was born out of a desire to preserve our familial bonds and ensure the well-being of our people and livestock. The decision was now mine to make, and I knew it would shape our destinies and legacies in this land we both had grown to cherish. Despite his seniority and the divine promise bestowed upon him, Abraham demonstrated remarkable humility and generosity. He allowed me, his nephew, the privilege of choosing my portion of the land first. In that moment, my decision was guided by earthly desires and immediate gratifications. Gazing upon the verdant, flourishing plains of the Jordan Valley, I saw an opportunity for prosperity and ease. The land's lush beauty and abundant resources promised a life of comfort and success, reminiscent of the Lord's own garden. Seduced by the charm of this fertile landscape, I chose the Jordan Valley, prioritizing my needs and aspirations without considering the spiritual implications. I would only stay close to the city, as the area was also corrupt with great sin. In contrast, Abraham's choice to relinquish the first selection and entrust his fate to God's guidance was a testament to his unwavering faith. His focus remained on the spiritual promise and covenant with God, even when faced with the uncertainty of what he might receive. Things started to get worse for me. I was caught in a battle of kings. Kolawole, the formidable king of Elam, what you might now call Persia, asserted his dominance over the lesser kings nestled beside the Dead Sea. These kings, once subjugated, harbored a burning bitterness that festered for over a decade, erupting into revolt in the 13th year. My story intertwines with theirs, as my fate was sealed by the geography of our lands and the allegiances of the time. Sensing the tide of descent, Kolawole mustered the might of allied kings from the lands of Babylon. Their team, a formidable assembly of power and ambition, launched on a strategic march that bypassed the Dead Sea to confront the defiant cities, Sodom, Gomorrah, and their neighbors on the western plains. The conflict took place in the valley of Siddim, a landscape disfigured by dangerous asphalt pits, hidden dangers lurking beneath its deceptive veneer. The Allied forces, with their superior might and coordination, overwhelmed the rebel kings. The clash was merciless, and the outcome was grim. In the chaos, I found myself trapped by the tides of war, a pawn in a game of kingdoms. Captured in the turmoil, I was led away from the only life I knew, ensnared in the victor's chains, a trophy of their conquest, a casualty of war. Even as I languished in captivity, pondering my uncertain future, my thoughts often turned to Abram and my future. Little did I know, the wheels of fate were turning, and my uncle, ever the shepherd of his family, would not abandon me to my fate. Abram's actions would rekindle my hope. During those tumultuous times, when Amraphel reigned over Shinar, Arioch over Elasar, Kolawole over Elam, and Tidal over Goyim, a grave conflict arose. In my days of trial, when the world seemed against me, it was my uncle Abram who stood as my beacon of hope. I recall those rough times, rooted in peril, when my fate hung in the balance, and Abram emerged as my savior. The news reached him and stirred his spirit into action. With resolve, he gathered a force of 318 men, each one trained and loyal. Their journey led them northward to Dan, a land where the very air bristled with the tension of impending conflict. Yet with Abram at their helm, they pressed on, undeterred by the distance or the dangers that lay hidden in the paths they tread. Their pursuit was relentless, their determination unyielding, until they finally drew near Damascus. The battle that followed was fierce, a testament to the valor and might of Abram and his men. Against overwhelming odds, they emerged victorious, their triumph echoing far beyond the battlefield. For it was not merely a conflict of arms, but of unwavering faith and indomitable spirit. In that moment of triumph, I was liberated, not just from my captors, but from the shadows of despair that had once entangled me. However, I stayed farther and farther in the territory of Sodom. Here I prospered, even though I stayed away from the corruption myself. Throughout the stages of my life, I experienced a painful descent, mainly due to the string of compromises I made. Initially, my gaze merely wandered toward Sodom, captivated by its lushness, reminiscent of the Garden of Eden itself. This fleeting glance soon transformed into a deliberate decision as I pitched my tent toward Sodom, inching ever closer to what I perceived as a land brimming with opportunity and prosperity. In time, my visits turned into permanent residence within the infamous walls of Sodom, marking my complete immersion. It has been over a quarter of a century since I, along with my cherished family, bid farewell to the familiar grounds of Haran. Those days now seem like distant memories, shadows of a past life that shaped me. Now, I am deeply woven into the fabric of Sodom's bustling society. Through the years, my relentless determination and unwavering dedication have propelled me up the social ladder, securing a position of respect and authority within the community. With its vibrant streets and diverse inhabitants, this city has become more than just my home. It has become a part of who I am, an integral piece of my identity. My daughters have grown into admirable young women, each forming their unique ties to this city. They are now betrothed to men of Sodom, a testament to their maturity and the life we've built here. Their forthcoming weddings are not just unions of love, but are also symbolic bridges, meshing my family with the heartbeat of this city. I will not lie to you. Sodom is not a very welcoming city. And this is the great sin of Sodom. The city and its neighboring towns were enveloped in prosperity and tranquility, bountifully supplied with food and luxuries. Yet amid this abundance, a pervasive coldness toward the impoverished and needy prevailed. My uncle Abraham, a man of profound faith and righteousness, often implored us to extend our hands in generosity and kindness. However, the hearts of Sodom's inhabitants were hardened by pride and indulgence. Their minds, lost in a mist of self-satisfaction, paid no heed to the plights of those less fortunate. It wasn't merely the neglect of people experiencing poverty that marked Sodom, but also the rampant arrogance that permeated its society. The people engaged in detestable deeds, flaunting their disregard for principles and holy decrees in the most public and offensive manners. Their actions, blatant and shameless, were not hidden from the eyes of the Almighty. However, the worst was yet to come. I typically stayed at the gate entrance of the city. Standing at the gate of our city, which felt less like a fortification and more like the heart of our community, I often reflected on the scenes unfolding before me. This area, bustling and vibrant, was where our city's respected elders and leaders would gather. Their roles were vital. They judged disputes, meditated on critical community matters. Despite its significance as a communal hub, the city gate also exposed me to the disheartening realities of our society. Living in Sodom and Gomorrah, I was constantly surrounded by acts and decisions that went against my faith. Every day, I witnessed the moral decay that pervaded these cities, a stark contrast to the teachings and principles upheld by my uncle Abraham, a man of great virtue and righteousness. My heart was heavy with turmoil as I observed my neighbor's actions, disregard for decency, and indulgence in wrongdoing. Although I was recognized as a man of good character and morals, I became increasingly conflicted. The sin tormented my soul, yet regrettably, my actions did not mirror the intensity of my inner disquiet. Despite my unease, I did not muster the resolve to free myself and my beloved family from this corrosive environment. Then one night, I saw something that would change my life forever. 2 mysterious men. That evening in Sodom was one like any other. It would be the last night for Sodom. There I was, seated at the city's gate, lost in my own thoughts amidst the usual hustle and bustle, when my gaze fell upon 2 strangers approaching. They carried with them an aura of distinction, one that set them apart from any traveler I had ever encountered. Rising to meet them, a sense of reverence washed over me. My heart told me they were no ordinary visitors. Their presence demanded respect, even veneration. With a deep bow, my face met the earth, an act of humility and honor. "My lords," I addressed them, "please grace my humble abode with your presence. Rest within its walls, wash the dust from your feet, and allow yourselves a moment of respite under my roof. Come morning, you may continue your journey, refreshed and renewed." Their initial refusal, desiring instead to spend the night in the square, reflected the starkness of Sodom's inhospitality, a trait all too common among my fellow citizens. Yet something within me could not bear the thought of such esteemed guests lying vulnerably in the open square. With gentle insistence, I implored them to reconsider, my words laced with a sincerity that I hoped would persuade their hearts. To my relief and honor, they agreed, stepping across the threshold of my home. At that moment, I felt a profound sense of purpose, a calling to extend the most excellent hospitality within my means. I set about preparing a feast, sparing no effort to comfort them. Unleavened bread, a humble yet fitting offering, was baked with care and served alongside other simple delicacies, each dish prepared with a sense of reverence for the divine company we were blessed to host. Hospitality is all about making others feel welcomed and cared for. It means showing kindness and generosity to guests and even people we don't know. The idea of hospitality is like showing love to those who are not familiar to us. In my time, travelers really counted on the kindness of people they didn't know. Traveling was risky. There were few places to stay, and most Christians needed more money to afford them. So they often relied on strangers opening up their homes, not just to stay, but sometimes even to hold church services. Being hospitable and welcoming strangers into your home was seen as a significant good deed. It was a sign of true leadership and caring. Abraham would do the same. As night fell over the city, an unsettling tension hovered in the air, observable even within the perceived safety of my dwelling in Sodom. I was in a tricky position, a moral turmoil that had beset our lands. As my guests sought rest within my home, a noisy uproar encircled us from outside. The men of Sodom, a congregation of youths and older people, had encircled my home frighteningly. Their presence was an oppressive force, a living embodiment of the city's perversive moral decay. From every corner they came, their footsteps a racket of confrontation, their voices rising in a harsh demand that shattered the evening's delicate calm. With a sense of dread tightening around my heart, I heard them call out to me, the words piercing the cover of night with sinister clarity. "Lot!" Their voice is a combination of aggression and passionate intent. "Where are the men who have taken shelter under your roof this night? Present them unto us, for we desire to know them intimately." I stood, a single man in between the sanctity of my home and the corrupt desires of my fellow citizens, wrestling with the knowledge that the events of this night would echo through the annals of our shared history, a testament to the choices we make when confronted with the essence of our humanity. As I deliberated upon my course of action, the voices outside grew more insistent, a rough chorus that would not be denied. With each passing moment, the distinction between host and protector, between the obligations of kinship and the demands of righteousness, became ever more blurred. I knew that my response would not only determine my guest's fate, but also reflect the honorable compass that guided me in the shadow of my Uncle Abraham's enduring legacy. Standing at the doorway of my home, I felt a surge of fear and responsibility as the aggressive crowd surged outside. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me to face them, and attempt to shield my guests from the growing hostility. I implored the men gathered there, my voice trembling yet firm. "Please, my brothers, I beg of you, let us not descend into such depravity." My heart was heavy as I continued, the weight of my proposal nearly unbearable. "Look, I am a father to 2 innocent daughters who have lived pure lives, unaware of such violence. I will bring them to you, offering them instead, so you may redirect your intentions. Do with them as you deem fit. But I beseech you, spare these men. They came to me seeking refuge, and they are under the protection of my roof." The crowd's response was cold and immediate, their voices unified in contempt. "Move aside," they demanded, their impatience clear. Their rejection of my plead echoed in the narrow streets, a stark reminder of the moral decay that surrounded us. In that moment, standing alone against the tide of anger and violence, I was torn between the duties of hospitality and the love for my family. The voices outside grew louder, their words cutting deep into my soul. "This man Lot, he dares to judge us, though he is but an outsider, a temporary dweller among us," they sneered. Their animosity was tangible, their intent malicious. They vowed to deal with me even more harshly than they had planned for my unwelcome visitors. My heart raced as they surged forward, their bodies pressing against my feeble door, threatening to shatter and expose me to their wrath. In that moment of sheer terror, when all seemed lost, a miraculous intervention unfolded. The men inside my home, divine messengers disguised as travelers, reached out with swift, decisive actions. Their hands infused with otherworldly strength, grasped mine and pulled me from the clutches of danger, ushering me into the safety of the house. As the door slammed shut behind us, a profound sense of relief washed over me, though I remained acutely aware of the chaos that raged just beyond its confines. Then, something extraordinary happened. The angels, these celestial protectors, unleashed a divine sentence upon the mob. With a power beyond human comprehension, They struck the assailants with blindness. Young and old alike were enveloped in darkness, their sinister intentions thwarted by their newfound vulnerability. I watched, awestruck, as they stumbled and flailed, their efforts to locate the door now futile endeavors consumed by desperation and confusion. In those harrowing moments, my life was forever changed. I witnessed the might of God, the protection afforded to those under its wing. Though I was but a humble man, a visitor in a land not my own, I felt a profound connection to something greater, a force that transcends the mortal plane. And in that connection, I found solace, strength, and an unwavering resolve to face whatever trials lay ahead, guided by the unseen hand of Providence that had so mercifully intervened on that fateful night. At that moment, the gravity of our situation bore down upon me. These were not mere visitors. They were messengers of a higher realm, and the townspeople's bold demand threatened to breach a covenant far beyond the understanding of mortal men. 2 men, who I later understood were angels sent by the Lord, came to me with an urgent message that shook the very core of my being. They asked me solemnly, "Lot, do you have anyone else here in Sodom? Perhaps a son-in-law, your sons or your daughters? You must gather them all, anyone you cherish in the city. The time is critical." I felt a surge of panic, mixed with an urgent need to act. The angels explained the gravity of the situation with stark clarity. "We are here on divine mission. The outcry against this city has reached the heavens, and it is so profound and so grievous that the Lord has decided to destroy it, to erase its sins and wrongdoings from the face of the earth." With my heart pounding in my chest, I rushed out into the darkening streets to find my sons-in-law, young men betrothed to my daughters, their futures once bright with promise. I implored them, "You must listen to me. Rise and leave this place at once. The Lord's judgment is upon Sodom, and he will destroy it in his wrath." But my urgency and fear did not translate. To them, my words seemed unthinkable. They laughed, dismissing my pleas as sheer jest, unable to see the truth of the divine warning I conveyed. I was acutely aware of the impending disaster, yet unable to convince my own family to flee from the catastrophic fate that awaited the city. This was a pivotal moment, a test of faith and obedience. I had to heed the angel's warning and escape with those who believed. The fate of my household hung in the balance. In those frantic, fleeting moments, I learned the hard truth that one cannot compel belief or action in others, only offer guidance and hope they will see the light of truth themselves. As the night advanced, the reality of our situation grew ever more stark. The once vibrant city of Sodom was on the cusp of destruction, and I, a man who had walked with my uncle Abraham and seen the hand of God move in wondrous ways, faced the ultimate test of faith. It was a moment that would define my family's legacy and alter our destinies forever. As dawn's early light crept across the landscape, the angels, those celestial messengers, were adamant in their warning to me. "Lot, arise quickly," they implored. "Gather your wife and your 2 daughters who dwell under your roof. You must flee this place without delay, lest you be ensnared in its impending doom." Despite their clear warning, a paralyzing hesitance gripped me. My heart was heavy, my limbs frozen, as I grappled with the reality of abandoning everything I knew. But the angels in their mercy did not leave me to my indecision. With firm yet gentle hands, they guided me, my beloved wife and our daughters, pulling us away from the brink of catastrophe. I was acutely aware of their kindness, a mercy bestowed upon me for the sake of my uncle Abraham, a man of great faith and virtue. Once outside the perilous bounds of the city, the gravity of the angel's command impressed me once more. "Flee for your very life," one exclaimed. "Cast not a glance backward, nor pause in all the valley. Seek refuge in the mountains, lest you be destroyed in the wrath that is to come." Yet even in that moment of dire urgency, a seed of reluctance found its voice within me. "Oh, my lords," I implored, my voice mixed with desperation and fear. "Surely you would not send me to the mountains. Is there not another way, another path of escape that might offer sanctuary without leading me into such rugged and unfamiliar terrain?" My plea was born of a deep-seated dread, a fear of the unknown that clung to me, even as the world I knew teetered on the brink of destruction. Yet despite my fears and reservations, the imperative to survive and protect my family propelled me forward. With a heavy heart, I steeled myself for the journey, trusting in the mercy that had been extended to me, and praying for the strength to face whatever lay ahead. I stood there, overwhelmed by the gravity of the situation, the imminent destruction of the cities I once called neighbors, and the undeniable mercy shown to me, a mere mortal, by divine beings. I remember pleading, my voice laden with urgency and fear. "I have been shown an unfathomable kindness, a mercy so vast that it has spared my very life from the wrath destined for Sodom. Yet here I stand, humbly imploring for yet another favor. The disaster that looms over us will surely overtake me before I can ever reach the heights' safety. I will perish before I ever lay my eyes on refuge." I gazed upon a nearby town, modest in size and close enough to offer sanctuary. This town, though insignificant in the eyes of many, beckons to me as a beacon of hope. It is within my reach, and its modest population could surely spare place for one more soul seeking shelter. Allow me, I pray, to find refuge within its walls, to continue the breath of life you've so graciously preserved. The response from the celestial being was a testament to the compassion that exceeds human understanding. "Behold, I grant you this sanctuary. Escape to this small town, for it shall be spared. Do not delay, for the fate of Sodom hangs in the balance, awaiting your safe passage to this haven." And so, I made my way to Zoar, the town that would mark the beginning of a new chapter in my life. Yet as I ventured forth, the heavens unleashed their fury upon Sodom and Gomorrah, an awe-inspiring display of power and justice, razing the cities to the ground, eradicating all traces of their existence. While salvation was mine, my heart aches for my wife, who succumbed to the human weakness of longing for what was left behind. Despite the warnings, she cast a final glance toward Sodom. She was transformed into a pillar of salt, a strong reminder of the consequences of disobedience and the importance of looking forward to the mercy and grace that guide us to salvation. In this story, I seek not only to remember the events that shaped my destiny, but also to impart a lesson of humility, gratitude, and the profound impact of divine mercy on the course of human lives. Let's understand the significant impact of my life choices. Picture this. When I tried to warn my sons-in-law about God's impending judgment with deep concern and seriousness, they did not take me seriously. They just couldn't believe me. This disbelief meant that they too would face God's judgment without any escape. Yes, I was saved. But what did I achieve? Nothing noteworthy or lasting. My life is a stark reminder that just being saved isn't enough. What we do with our lives also profoundly matters. As the angel mentioned, God's judgment couldn't start on Sodom and Gomorrah until me and my family had reached the safety of Zoar. This was necessary to keep God's promise to Abraham intact. Once I and my family were saved, then the Lord sent down fire and sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah. These cities faced total and harsh judgment, but only after God had fully seen their sins and acknowledged that I, Lot, was there as a good man among them. Before all this happened, the land of Sodom was incredibly lush and fertile, much like the Garden of Eden. My wife had every opportunity to live. She was familiar with the God whom I served, and she had Abraham as an uncle and might have learned a lot from him. She was exceedingly blessed to have God's angels in her home. They even took her by the hand and led her out of Sodom. But what good did it all do her in the end? All of God's grace was wasted on her. There are several key takeaways here. It is possible to be lost forever, even though you are religious and have every opportunity to do right. You can come from a pleasing family, have many spiritual advantages, and still be lost. You can leave the world and begin on the correct path, but you will be eternally lost if you turn back. You are in charge of your own beliefs. Looking back was an indication of doubt. She had to confess to God the penalty and fate of Sodom. He had spoken, and he would carry out his promise. We may declare that we believe God, yet when the test comes, we waver and look back. God invites us to put our trust in Him and turn our attention to spiritual matters. Looking back was disobedience, because God had clearly instructed not to look back. Go to the mountains and don't come back. There was no time allotted to hear all of her excuses or reasons for disobeying. To look back may have revealed her true attachment to Sodom. Was she displaying a love for what she was leaving behind? Her body was leaving, but her heart was still in Sodom. Do we want to be friends with the rest of the world? This does not imply giving up everything in the world. This world represents everything that is opposed to God, the wickedness that was once a part of your life. My wife's punishment was terrible, abrupt, and irreversible. She was denied another chance to flee when she looked back. All mercy that had previously been extended was abruptly withdrawn. There will come a time when all of your opportunities to obey God will be gone. Some individuals scoff at preaching and teaching that refers to any impending judgment. They perceive it as scare tactics, intended to frighten children and fools. We are too wise to believe it. In that moment of profound reflection, I contemplated the enormity of the events that had transpired. It was a sobering realization of the power wielded by the Almighty, a power that could both create and obliterate with equal ease. This experience would forever serve as a pivotal chapter in my life's journey, a stark illustration of the fragile balance between holy justice and mercy, and the inescapable consequences of our choices and actions. I recall the day vividly, as if it were just yesterday. I lived in the cities of the plain, a land brimming with life and activity. Yet amidst this vibrancy, I could not shake off a palpable sense of impending doom. The skies above us, once clear and bright, darkened as if mourning the fate that awaited us. It was a time of great distress and turmoil. I had witnessed moral decay and rampant disregard for virtue in these cities. Despite the prosperity and the pleasures that seemed abundant, an emptiness pervaded the air, a warning of the judgment that was to come. Fire and brimstone rained from the heavens, an inferno that consumed everything in its path. The very ground beneath us trembled, and the air was filled with the cries of the doomed. As I fled from the cities, I dared not look back. The sights and sounds of destruction were all around me, a stark reminder of the consequences of wickedness. But amidst the fear and the turmoil, there was a glimmer of hope. For I knew that God's mercy had spared me, that I was given a chance to begin anew. After I, Lot, along with my 2 daughters, left the small town of Zoar, we found ourselves seeking refuge in the rugged mountains. Our hearts were heavy with the burden of our recent past, and the fear of lingering in Zoar any longer drove us to seek solitude. In those mountains, we discovered a cave that offered us shelter. It was there, within the cold, dimly lit walls of that cave, that we decided to make our dwelling. Life in the mountains was harsh and isolating. Days turned into nights, and the loneliness that enveloped us was almost palpable. I am Lot, and this is my story.